Welcome, everyone, back to the Culture Encounters podcast. I'm your host, Chad Ownby, and this week we are starting the first episode of a new series that I'm very excited about, entitled Road Trip. As you know, here at Culture Encounters, we love to talk about different cultures and everything, and for Road Trip, I thought it would be cool to talk about the different unique experiences and cultural experiences is possible to be found in each state in the United States of America. That's right, perfect in time for the summer. So we're gonna actually begin our road trip podcast by talking about two different states. Part one of this is going to be about Hawaii. We're starting with the last state first. That's right, because why not? And then we're going to talk about Missouri a little bit and just the different experiences possible in Missouri, the different cultural encounters possible in Hawaii. So this will be a two-part episode. Part one will be Hawaii. Part two will be Missouri. And we're going to be talking to Kaitlin Eddy, someone I've known for, gosh, forever. We would have met briefly in high school and then again in college. But she is awesome, and I can't wait to talk to her about the experiences she's had. So let's go ahead and start with Hawaii, and then I'll bring her in. So some fun facts about Hawaii. It was the last state to join the Union in 1959. It was first settled by the Polynesians. The state flower is yellow hibiscus. The state bird, I believe I'm saying it correctly, is the Nene goose. The state motto is "The life of the land is preserved in righteousness." And the state food, according to one website, is actually the coconut muffin. I would have thought it was like the thing you always hear about is spam, but apparently it is the coconut muffin. I was surprised by that. I did not know that. So that was something new I learned in my research. So we're going to go ahead again, I've never been to Hawaii. I would like to one day. But since I've never been there, it's always really cool to talk to someone who has either lived in the state, is from the state, or has spent significant time in the state. So we're going to bring in Kaitlin right now. Hey, Kaitlin, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. This is awesome. So let's go ahead and dive right in. When did you live in Hawaii? And what made what made you let's not do what made you. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. What so when did you live in Hawaii? How long did you live in Hawaii? How old were you when you lived in Hawaii? And we'll just kind of start there.
Cool. So we moved to Hawaii when I was in fifth grade. How old are you in fifth grade? Like 10, maybe 11?
Yeah, 10, 11, yeah.
Yeah. So my dad was in the military. We got stationed there. And it's one of the places we live that made a huge impact because it's like you're getting into like your preteen years. It's kind of old to remember a bunch of things that like happened and like all the different culture. So it was just something that really impacted me as a kid. We lived there from when I was 10 and then most of middle school. And then the end of middle school is when we moved to Virginia. So I spent like 3.5 years there. And on a military base. So that probably makes my experience a little bit different too. We weren't like, in like civilian life, we were on a military base, but I feel like my parents, at least my mom, did a really good job of trying to expose us to local culture. And we also made really good friends with like a local family that I'm still friends with. So that impacted a lot too, like being friends with somebody who was local and grew up there.
That's awesome. What island did you guys live on?
We lived on Oahu.
Okay.
Lived on Schofield Barracks, which is like smack dab in the middle.
Got you. Okay, cool. So, so you guys were military. So that meant that you, are used to traveling a lot. So, my question about that is, was there ever a sense of urgency for you to be like, okay, I need to experience as much of Hawaii as I can because I know this probably I'm probably not gonna be here forever. Or what was that something that really kind of that is that an experience you had growing up in a military family where it's like, okay, not going to be here forever, so I need to experience as much as possible now? Or was that not really something on your radar?
I think it was so normal for us to move as kids because we lived the longest we ever lived somewhere was like 3 years. So it was one to
Right,
three anywhere we were stationed. So we were very used to like, this is where we're living now. This is going to be a little bit, and then we're just going to go somewhere else.
right,
I think Hawaii was the biggest change for us. So it was the most shocking culturally, and just yeah, I think like school was so different because the culture is so ingrained in everything there, even on base. So everything was so different that we were kind of in culture shock for a while. And as
right.
kids, like I was old enough to get that like Hawaii wasn't this like, I don't know. My brother and sister, I just remember them having this idea of like, are we gonna live in a hut? I was like,
Right,
no, because they were a
right,
lot younger. And I remember my
right.
brother was like, well, how are we going to get there? It's like an ocean away. Are we going to have to like get on a boat? Like, no, we fly. It is very like modern. I don't know
Yeah,
why they
yeah.
had this idea that we were going to wear hula skirts and like have to
Just
make
like
our own
almost like a
food.
stereotype.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was definitely, I just remember as a kid getting off the plane and being like, this is so different. Just the flowers and the nature as soon as you get off the plane is so different from anywhere I'd lived in the US. And so that was the biggest shock first. And then the Hawaiian people are just so like friendly, and how they greet you is so different from and like the mainland. So it was, yeah, huge culture shock. But as a kid we were just like in the moment absorbing it, didn't
Right.
care if it was going to be a year or 3 years. It was, yeah, we were very in the now.
Now did where did you live right before Hawaii?
Kansas for 10 months.
That is, I would imagine that is not the same.
No, so much better because Kansas
uh,
was like middle of nowhere.
right.
And it wasn't like that much different from, I don't even remember where we were before that, Louisiana, and like we lived mostly like southern US, so it was all
Hmm.
kind of the same.
Right.
And then we
Right.
like got transplanted to Hawaii, and then yeah, went back to southern US. So
So is like you were almost. I wonder if it was almost like a Dorothy Oz experience going from Kansas to Hawaii, where it's like, oh, this is black and white now. This is like a world in color.
it
That's crazy.
does feel like a world of color because everything is literally so colorful. The flowers, like everything is so vibrant and green and blue, and the people
Hmm.
I feel like are so vibrant, and everybody's
And,
just happy
and
to be there. Whereas like in Kansas, I feel like nobody was really happy to be there.
right, maybe
Everybody
more
was like having a
pride
good
too.
time.
I
So
wonder about that too, because one of the things that was mentioned in my research was it is the state where the most people identify as more than one ethnicity.
mhm.
People identify as, from what I was seeing, more than any other state. Um, the people identify as multicultural.
Mhm.
Is that something that you would have experienced? Because we in America, people are very prideful about, right or wrong, being American. Like that is the cultural identity of many people. They identify as American, which is, almost kind of a misnomer because we are a country of so many different cultures. And
Right.
in Hawaii, is it I'm a Hawaiian and then American for a lot of people, or is it kind of just like an amalgamation of both?
It's I I don't remember as much patriotism being so like in your face as it is like on
Right.
the mainland.
Yeah.
I and when like immediately what I thought of when you mentioned the multicultural, there's a huge Asian influence, so a huge Japanese influence.
Right.
Uh, there's a lot of like Japanese culture within, so there's also Hawaiian and other Polynesian cultures. Samoan is big. I'm trying to think what other cultures were big. Hawaiian, Samoan, Japanese,
Hmm.
and other like Asian like subcultures. So it's a big mixing pot of all of those things to the point where they have their own like street language called pidgin, which is a
Ooh.
mashup of Hawaiian and Samoan and Japanese and just words and other languages put together. Um, I don't know Pigeon. I know there were certain words that we used from Pigeon. So like for the longest time, my auntie, who was Hawaiian and Samoan, that we met there, with it, like she would, instead of saying like go to the bathroom, they would say shishi, which is pee in Japanese. And so
Oh
like
wow.
little words were like, I'm trying to think of other ones that there would be like little Hawaiian words that you'd use. So you'd be speaking English, but then dotted in were Hawaiian, Samoan, Japanese words too.
Interesting.
Um, but
That's
then it's
really
also
interesting.
like a way of speaking too. So if you heard somebody like actually speaking Pigeon, it's so hard to keep up with. You like, yeah, it's, even if you know English, like there's so many different words being thrown in, it's really hard to keep up with. And super cool just how all the different cultures mash together and impact.
Do they speak so like Pidgin is that's a combination of like Polynesian, Hawaiian, and Japanese?
Japanese, I'm trying to think if there was any other Asian. I just remember there being huge Japanese influence.
Right.
I'm sure there were other Asian languages and other Asian cultures that were prevalent. I just remember like Japanese being really, really
Right.
strong. Um, yeah, but also English. So like English and then all these other words dotted in. But
Right.
it was also like a street language. So there was also um, like slang terms and stuff
Yeah.
also in that. And so it's its own language there that if you were born and raised in Hawaii, you grew up knowing Pigeon and speaking Pigeon like on the street. Um,
You would
nobody, sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I never you didn't ever like walk out and hear people just speaking straight Hawaiian or straight Samoan really.
Hmm.
It was either like English or Pigeon. You didn't, or you hear a lot of tourists speaking different languages because there's a huge tourism,
Right.
um, obviously in Hawaii. But yeah, you never walked in anywhere and were like, at least as a kid, I don't remember. Maybe in stores, like family owned stores, you would hear people speaking their like native language, but
Hmm.
it wasn't something where if you're like going to Germany, you're going to hear a lot of people speaking German, or Italy. It's not as much that everybody speaks English. So
Now, what about my next question is, you grew up there, or you spent time in Hawaii during very important years in someone's childhood. Adolescence is so everything is so formed during those times about you as a person. So how would you say that growing up around such a unique cultural experience shaped you and as you were growing up? How did that influence you as far as how you see the world, how you interact with people?
weirdly, I think it's a lot of like how I interact and with just like day to day life stuff. I noticed when I moved to Virginia, like one of the things that is super, super important in Hawaii is you never wear your shoes in the house
Mm,
because the soil is really, really rich in red clay and it
hmm.
ruins and stains everything. So number one, you don't ruin like whoever's house. And it's just like a respect thing too. Even if your shoes aren't dirty, you never wear your shoes in the house. It doesn't matter if you're like an HVAC technician coming to fix somebody's air conditioning, if you're there to clean somebody's house, it doesn't matter. You don't wear your shoes in anyone's house. And so
Hmm.
when I moved like to Virginia, I remember as soon as I went over to somebody's house, I would take my shoes off. And people thought that was so weird.
Really?
And it was just something that like I still do now. I'm
Yeah.
like, where do I put my shoes? Like, you don't have to
Right.
take your shoes off. So things like that I've noticed have just stuck. There are different words that I say differently because I was raised in the South a lot and like my parents are from Virginia. So there
Hmm.
are words that I say that are more Southern, but then there are words like my auntie, I call her my auntie, but like more Southern people I think would say aunt, like their
Right.
aunt
Right.
Nettie,
Means
their
are
aunt.
on. Yeah.
So um there are certain words that I say that are more like that's more of a Hawaiian, you would say aunt. Um,
In Hawaii, what do they call soda? Is it soda in Hawaii?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think it's pop.
Right. Because like I know, like my girlfriend's family, they're all from Ohio, so it's pop. Everything is pop. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't matter what you're drinking. Whereas like growing up in Virginia my whole life, it was soda.
soda.
And then
Yeah.
like some places everything is Coke. Like it doesn't matter what you're drinking, it's a Coke.
And that's the weird part about living on a military base too, is so you're being impacted by the culture of where you live, but then you're also being impacted by the culture of the people that you're on base with and living close to.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, I couldn't tell you, because it's like I'm trying to remember like my cousins or my auntie what they would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't remember. I think just because there's so much, like, I remember our neighbors were from Kansas. The people across the street were like, remember they were Northerners, and they spoke, as like when I was a kid, they spoke so differently than anything I'd ever heard.
Right.
So I don't
Um,
remember.
and,
Yeah, I don't remember.
and that's amazing to me that, like, there's so many different places in, the United States, but culturally there's so many differences. And that's kind of the mission statement really of this podcast. So now we're going to talk about food.
Oh,
My favorite thing. I know, so the state food they said was coconut muffins. Have you ever had a coconut muffin?
no. And when I was listening to you say that, I was like, it is. There's so many other things I could have listed to be
Yeah,
this food, and that I can't say I've ever even seen a coconut muffin. I don't remember as a kid ever even like hearing about that.
that's
So
crazy. I wonder
close.
if my source is incorrect there. Because I would have thought either
But
something pineapple related or like spam and eggs
I
or
would have thought it would have been like Halpia, or like or oh my gosh, why can I not think of what it is? Um
what is halpia?
Halpia is like a coconut, like not jello, but kind of like coconut jello. That makes it
Interesting.
sound gross, but it's like it's like um coconut and sugar, and it's made into this like jello like consistency.
Almost like a
And so
custard.
yeah, but like more like formed like a jello,
Got you.
but it's so good. It sounds so weird. It's so delicious. And so one of the things we used to get a lot, and that's really big out there, is chocolate halpia pie. So it's a pie and then like a chocolate custard and then the halpia on top. So it's chocolate and coconut, and it is amazing. It's so
Nice.
good. Um, I'm trying to think of the other thing that I was that it's gonna kill me now that I can't think of what it is. It's made out of taro root and it's purple, and people think of it when they think of Hawaii. Um,
Made out of carob root, you said?
Taro root.
Oh, okay, got you.
Well, why can't I not think of what it's called? It's like so stereotypical Hawaiian. Like I would think that would be.
So, like, say you were going to your auntie's house,
Mhm.
in Hawaii, and they're like serving guests for dinner. What would
Yeah.
be a dish that they would serve?
Kalua pork is a big one that's like sticks out to me that I loved as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically just like um, shredded pork over rice with like a gravy.
Nice.
Delicious,
That sounds
amazing.
good.
Sometimes they would have like a seasoning over top of it, like a seaweed seasonings, kind of like a Japanese influence thing. I remember they served
Awesome.
it at our school, which I loved. I loved Clue Pork Days. Um, so like they would incorporate even like local food too into our military on
Yeah, I was
base.
going to ask. Did you go to school on the base?
Yeah,
Exactly.
they didn't have a middle school on our base, so we had to get driven over to the Air Force Base, I think. And then if I went to high school there, you actually go to the local high school, which I kind of feel like I missed out on doing that. But
Sure.
yeah, all the military kids got to go like hang out with all the local kids, which you don't really get as much on a military base, unless they live super close to base. So
Uh, got you. So my last question about Hawaii would be, if somebody is going to Hawaii and they have one day to spend there, what would be the one thing that you would tell them you absolutely have to do this?
I feel like it would be super silly to go to Hawaii and not just go watch the sunset on the beach somewhere, like a good local
Right.
beach. There's so many cool beaches with different nature, like cool nature spots, waterfalls, hikes. If you go to Hawaii and you don't go on a hike and just enjoy the nature of the island, you're missing out. So like forget all of the resorts and the tourist destinations and go on like a good Hawaiian hike and see all the different views and the flowers and the plants, and oh, the Hawaiian air is just so much nicer than any other air. So nature, just go experience everything in nature.
That sounds amazing. So you guys heard it here. Folks, go on a nature hike. Go watch a sunset on a beach. That sounds amazing.